Good evening, campers. My name is Kira. Today we're going to talk about the 2020 book, The Animals in That Country by Laura Jean McKay. A book where a pandemic ensues, and one of its chief symptoms is the ability to understand animals. A premise that definitely piqued my interest. However, before we talk about the animals in this country, we need to talk about Margaret Atwood. I'll be honest, we're going to discuss her poem that is prefaced within this book, but I picked up the Penelope. I regret picking this up, I can't say it. Margaret Atwood wrote the poem The Animals in That Country, where the animals in that country have the faces of humans. And because they look like humans, they are treated as such. There isn't violence between animals and humans. There is caudality. Final stanzas of that poem, though, the animals in that country have the faces of animals, and they are deemed animals. They're not human. They're not seen as human. Therefore, they have the face of no one. Though Atwood's poem may be short, it's very concise and succinct in its message. How do we view animals? And I think that's what this book is trying. I've already had a breakdown over this book today.
Honestly, it's right. Okay, so there's a zoo flu. It's a sci-fi book, right? Okay, so there's zoo flu, which means that humans could hear animals. I'm not entirely sure if it works the other way around. Anyway, there's loads of things that the animals do, and I'm like, but this would have to ensue. This has to follow the logic that therefore the animals have continually been doing these things.
So why not do it again? We follow our protagonist, Jean, a alcoholic bogan granny who is somewhat a private Proust. And I don't mean that she has a penchant for writing. I mean that in between all her echet dialogue, she just moves into these really weird, very intellectual, poetic musings on life. The juxtaposition is enough to give you whiplash alone. But while Granny Jean has a pain in her neck, she has a pain in her hand because she has just been bitten by a dingo, Sue. Jean works at a zoo that is run by her daughter-in-law, Angela, and Jean really stays there for the granddaughter, Kimberly. Angela says to Jean that it's a little bit dangerous to assume that you understand what the animal thinks. It's a little bit of dramatic irony that sets the whole thing up. And while I thought this dingo bite was going to enter us into the Dingoverse, that's not the case. There is a pandemic flu, zoo flu, which, if you get it, you can understand animals. And Jean's son has it. He's left his wife and his kid to go and find himself, and he shouldn't be there, but because Jean has been, she's been drinking a little bit too much, she lets him in, and therefore they all contract zoo flu, meaning that Sue, the dingo, is now understandable to the humans. Kinda. I don't know how many times Jean had to say, what the fuck does that mean? In order to get to the reader that she doesn't really understand what the dingo means. How McKay distinguishes the human and the animal voice is quite interesting. The animals speak in almost like a Google translated sevenfold sapphic fragment. You can understand the gist of this dingo lingo, but this isn't like Dr. Dolittle. Now, Kim's dad Lee, who has zoo flu, has decided to kidnap his daughter so he can go and speak to the whales. This means that the premise that hooked me is really velcroed on top of a family melodramatic saga that is hung upon plot hole after plot hole after plot hole. Jean and the dingo hit the road, and at that point she kind of kicks the bottle. That's not really mentioned at all until she has a really weird interaction with Graham and again at the beach. The sexual interactions of this book just come up at a really weird time. Shenanigans happens and Jean and Sue make their way to the beach where the whales are calling humans out to the ocean for them to drown.
Whales out to the ocean hey, they're like the sirens in Greek mythology. I'm like, what but this means that they've always been doing that. It's not like we can hear them and now they've gone, hey boys, I lure the humans into the ocean and gobble them up. That's not how it works.
There's a lot of moments in this book where animals are doing something which they would have to do from the off. There's a rat that sings for peaches. Why is he? I don't need this episode of Ratatouille.
There's a mayfly being I only have a day to live. It's it doesn't think like that. The mayfly doesn't think. The mayfly doesn't wake up one day and goes, well, it's fucking over today, isn't it? It doesn't have a concept like that. There's a moment as well where she's eating this rotten food and she can hear the larvae maggots inside her, oh no, I'm burning in the stomach. I'm like, you wouldn't fucking hear that. There's so many moments It's just, I don't understand.
The animals in this country for the first third is very plotted. There's no real twists or turns. It's quite straight, and then it just loses its way. We're going on the back roads here, people.
Right, so it's like a pandemic, this zoo flu, and everyone's like, oh, but it's like the food. There's like food shortages. I'm like, what? Because animals can speak. Like the entire like the continent of Oceania goes, well, guys, like let's just give up. Hey, you got people like. Okay, you get people like going out like killing animals. I'm kind of like, yeah, okay, I can go with that. Like maybe they're a bit loud.
This wills itself to be bleak and melancholic, but you're just there going, why does any of this happening? While this book clearly has taken influence from Atwood, I don't even think this sticks to what Atwood's even trying to say. There's no real humanizing of the animals, apart from that they speak.
She's with this dingo, and the dingo's like just being a dingo, and she's like, how fucking dare you?
But the cardinal sin of this book is the deus ex machina at the end, which is so frustrated on so many levels that Dante should have written another layer of hell for this.
Right, so basically, oh fuck, I hate getting Deus Ex Machina.
On this book, there has been zero reference to a vaccine, but it just happens to appear at like a real pivotal moment in Jean's character.
Right at the end, and this soldier woman, she's like, hey, I got a vaccine. And the lady's like, yeah, well, like I quite like speaking to animals. And then the soldier goes, fucking tough, I'm gonna give you it. And then like puts this pill in her throat.
And the moment this vaccine's given to her, like, bam, she can't hear anymore, like, very quickly.
And then, boom, like, it's like it's like a moment later.
There is no drug, there's no medicine, there is nothing in this world apart from pulling a tapeworm out of your ass that works, like, immediately. I have no concept of where McKay was going with this, and then at the end, like, Deus Ex Machina's me? Like, you can pull my trousers down, but you start spanking me around, like, you have lost a friend. This was beyond a joke. There are so many things with this that this was like Diane Cook's New Wilderness, where this, like, sounded really good, but it was just dire. There's so much that just, like, it's not been thought out. It's a nice idea. I appreciate it. There's a lot of things where people be like, well, you don't know how animals speak. But neither do you, pal. I was sure for the ride at the beginning. I was down to jump in the car, but as soon as we, like, go down that road, it lost me. And I just hated reading this. It wasn't enjoyable. It was infuriating in, like, the worst way possible. I will never forgive McKay for the ending, and for that, I'm giving it a 1 out of 10.